As you read Chapter 3, I want you to think about how did the events in Chapter 3 further develop the conflict that's happening between the Nez Perce and General Howard and his soldiers. And then at the very end, there's another conflict that kind of happens, or that might start to happen. And I want you to think about what that is and how do you know that there is an actual conflict coming. Please follow along with me. The wind swirled high in the treetops. The one-armed general let go of his beard. My father unwrapped the light folds of his blanket. The general said, "Tell me, chief of the Wallowa Nez Perce, one whose intelligence is praised by his friends and enemies alike. Tell me, do you believe that I have spoken to you before and speak to you now with two different tongues?" "With one tongue only," my father said, "and I will too speak with one tongue. Believe me when I say that we do not wish to move to Lapwai." "I believe you, Chief Joseph. So you must believe me. I say again to you and to your clan that you must leave Wallowa." My father thought hard. His mouth was closed tight and his hands were pressed against his chest. He glanced at the snowy peaks and the blue lake and at the green meadows fading with the sun. "You do not understand that Wallowa is my home, and you do not understand why." The general was not listening. He said something to one of his soldiers, who smiled. My father did not notice. I noticed, and held my breath in fear. "When I had lived in the earth for 10 snows," my father said, "in this beautiful place that surrounds us, I climbed the mountain." He paused and pointed up to the mountain with both hands open. "High up, where I could look beyond in all directions, I made a bed on the stone. I had no water, no food. I closed my eyes. I put a pebble in my nose and a pebble in each ear to keep me awake. I floated far beyond the sky, far beyond the world. 5 suns I lay there, my stomach on the cold stone, my mouth burning with thirst. I began to wonder how many suns would rise before my guardian spirit came and spoke with me." The general was not listening. My father went on. He was talking more to himself than to the general. "I wondered if my guardian spirit would come, if he would leave me nameless and alone because I was unworthy of being a man. Then, without a sound, out of a quiet night, he came. I could not see him. Whether he was young or old, I cannot say, but clearly I heard him speak a name. I climbed down happy from the snow mountains. Other young men, my friends, had also gone to the sacred place and were given names. We chanted our names up until the moon went down and the sun came up. I have many names, but Thunder Rolling in the Mountain is the name that binds me forever to this land of wandering waters." "I am tired of talk," the general said. "I have heard enough talk. You and your people will leave Wallowa before 30 suns come and go." Hula Sote was walking up and down, staring out from the folds of his blanket. He was a huge man with fierce eyes and rumbling voice. "Who are you to tell us what we must do?" he said to the general. "You did not make these mountains. The spirit chief made these mountains. He made the streams and the meadows, the trees, the grass, the beasts that eat the grass, and the birds that weave it into this nest. The spirit chief made everything. Who is this man that will tell us to leave our home, our mother, and go to a place that does not belong to us?" "I am that man," the general said. My father moved between them. I am sure he had feared that the hot words would end in a bad fight. Once, when the general first came to Lapwai, he fought with Sote, put him in chains, and locked him up in the soldiers' jail. "I can't move my people to Lapwai now," my father said. "The Snake River is flooding. We would need to cross from one shore to the other through torrents of water. Many of my people are women, children, and the old. I have many thousands of cattle. Half of them would be swept away." The general pointed to a glittering sword at my father. "Listen," he shouted. "I have heard enough excuses. Now speak my last words. If you have not moved your tribe from this place before 30 suns have risen and set, I shall send soldiers with guns to drive you out." My father drew his blanket close about him. "I hear your words, and I carry them to our people. In 30 suns we'll be gone. There must be no blood." General Howard nodded his head. He did not smile, but there was a glint of pleasure in his eye. He motioned to a soldier. The soldier blew a trumpet, and the band galloped off. My father watched them cross the meadow, splash through the stream, and swiftly disappear. While he watched them and said nothing, I saw the redcoats scramble out of the bushes. Swan Necklace was waiting with their horses. He got on his own horse, and the 3 of them rode off, and I knew where the redcoats were going. Swift as arrows, they would ride to the village and tell all they heard. They would say Chief Joseph had given in to the one-armed general. They would say, Tuhuluhulsote had stood up to the general. Every word he had said would be said again. The young warriors would listen to my father, for they loved him, but they would not obey him. They would never leave Wallowa. They would follow Tuhulhulsote to death if that's where he led them. This was good. The idea of being driven away from soldiers to a strange place far from home I loved made wild thoughts flash through my mind. I saw myself riding into the soldiers' camp with a torch, setting fire to their tents. I saw myself take aim with my rifle and shoot a soldier from his horse. I saw another soldier running across the meadow, and I shot him too.